And I'm going to let Allegra and Greg go ahead and introduce themselves and get started.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you having us and letting us come talk today. And thank you to everyone for being here. So we are here today to talk about the Eagle County Conservation District's Noxious Weed program, specifically talking about the funding and implementation of that program. So my name is Allegra Waterman Snow. I am the program manager at the Eagle County Conservation District. I also have Greg Welsh here today with me, who is our district conservation technician with the district. And I'll be talking the first half, he'll be talking the second half. So you'll get to hear from him in just a little bit. Just to give a little bit of an overview on what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to start off with who we are, what we do. It seems like we'll have people from all over the country here, so give a little bit of perspective on our district. Talk about our programs just briefly to give an overview of what we do. I want to talk about past funding for the district, where we've historically gotten our funding sources from, how that all changed in 2024 for us with our program and with the district. Then I do want to talk about the details of our Noxious Weed program. We've really built it up, and Greg's done a lot of work on it. And I want to talk about the specifics of the program, what it looks like, how we implement it, as well as going over some of those program metrics and program issues. And then, yeah, there should be some time at the end for some questions too. So to start off, what is the Eagle County Conservation District? We are in Colorado, so middle of the country, in the Rocky Mountains. Got a little map there up of Colorado. We are more or less in the center of the state. For those familiar with Colorado, we're about 2 hours from Denver, 2 hours from Grand Junction, right in the middle of the state. And we were established in the 1950s, so we've been around for a while. We were quite inactive for a good period of time. Actually, up until about 2021, we were quite inactive and started making some waves starting in 2021. Eagle County itself is a sort of a hybrid county, where I guess you could consider somewhat rural. We have a population of about 55,000 full-time residents. That being said, again, for those familiar with Colorado, we have Vail Mountain in our county. So we have a lot of second homeowners, a lot of rental properties, things like that in the county as well. So full-time residents are about 55,000, and that definitely increases in the winter. Our population is pretty diverse. Again, going from those second homeowners up in Vail down to fifth generation ranches on the western end of the county. So pretty diverse demographics in the population, pretty diverse economics here in the county. And then we also have a pretty diverse environment. At the western end of the county, we are just above 6,000 feet in elevation. At the eastern end, we're just above 8,000 feet. And what that means is we have very different ecosystems. High desert on the west end to full alpine on the east end. So pretty wide range here, which has really informed how our district has grown. In order to meet sort of the diverse demands of the population and the environment, we needed to create a diverse set of programs that looks kind of like this. So this is sort of our main array of programs that we've got here at the Conservation District, at the Eagle County Conservation District. Everything from Beyond Lawn, which is our turf removal replacement rebate program. It's offered to all residents within the county, all the way to our virtual fencing projects, which we work with large agricultural producers, implementing and monitoring virtual fencing projects. We have everything in between as well. We have a wolf conflict mitigation program. Wolves were recently reintroduced to Colorado, so that's a big issue here. Soil health program, of course. We do seed sales, we do no-till drill rentals, and then our noxious weed cost share, the main topic of today. And honestly, one of our longest running programs that has been around for us for quite some time. Even when we were quite inactive, we had a noxious weed cost share program. It's been our longest running program with the district and has really expanded over the past few years. So now I've given a little bit of a background for the district. Um, we can dive into some of our funding sources and some of our changes that have happened in the past few years and how they pertain to our noxious weed cost share. So, as I said, prior to 2021, we were quite inactive, very small budget. We had a district manager who worked, I think, about 10 hours a month. So not much could really get done during that time. But we did have a noxious weed cost share program. We distributed county noxious weed cost share funding as a cost share. The way that that came about is we worked with Eagle County, with the Natural Resource Department at Eagle County to obtain a grant, a noxious weed grant through the Colorado Department of Agriculture. We went into the county as a partner on that grant, providing a 25% match. The county provided a 25% match, and then the participants created the additional 50% match on that. So it was a pretty small yearly budget for an noxious weed program. It was $5,000 annually. We had a cost share of $500 as the maximum that someone could receive. And it was a pretty straightforward process. We had a landowner who would apply, go through an application process, send that in to us. Our board would review that application, and then if approved, we would distribute the funding. We worked very closely with the county, the Natural Resource Department, on that. And just as a note, I know a lot of districts do chemical sales. We do not. We refer that to the county and always have. So that's something that we haven't engaged with. We, again, because of that partnership that we have with our county, that's something that they run and we can refer people to them for it. I should also note we don't have a weed and pest district here. So again, it's really us in the county taking that role. So 2021, things changed for us. And this I'll come back to. This is a pretty important piece in sort of how we made this program sustainable. We engaged in a contract with Eagle County to hire a full-time district manager. That contract with the county looked like in the range of $60,000 a year to help the district provide technical assistance, boots on the ground, capacity funding, and administration funding. So, in that contract with the county, we were able to hire that full-time district manager. And as you all probably know, once you have somebody full-time on the ground who's able to apply for grants, create partnerships, collaborations, a lot can happen. So that was really the big turning point and really sort of an aha moment for us, realizing that beyond just working together on a grant, we could work with the county on funding the conservation district, on creating a long-term solution. So in 2021, our district manager was hired, Laura, and I came on in 2022 as part of a grant project. 2024, Greg came onto the team as our district conservation technician, and then in 2025, we hired 2 new employees. So we are now a district of 5 employees, starting off just from that one in 2021. So now looking at our noxious weed program and how that really grew. With that district manager that we had, she was out there creating partnerships, collaborations, really getting to know the community, everybody within the community, and how the conservation district could come in and help. How could we engage in projects? How could we engage in collaborations to achieve mutual goals? That was really, really important because in 2023, we were approached. So we did not seek this out, but we were approached by the Colorado River watershed or folks within a group, the Colorado River Watershed Group, that were applying for the America the Beautiful Challenge. Little background on America the Beautiful Challenge, that was run through the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation and was a private-public grant program that provided funding for projects such as this. So we were approached to join the Colorado River Watershed Group to apply for this America the Beautiful Challenge grant. The Colorado River Watershed Group, it was comprised of about 4 or 5 members, 4 or 5 organizations, and the goal for every single one of these organizations within this challenge was noxious weed mitigation. The other organizations included Eagle County, our local watershed coalition, our neighboring conservation district, among others. So within this group, uh, most of the other organizations were doing project-based things, so restoration projects. Actually, one of them is doing a virtual fencing project to help mitigate weeds. But they came to us to be a part of this for the cost share, to really boost up the cost share that we had already built, make it bigger, make it better, and really promote it throughout the county so we could get more engagement in that cost share. So we joined that group, applied for the America the Beautiful Challenge. We received it in 2023. Some of the other projects within that group had to go through NEPA funding process, so we had to wait about a year for that to be completed. We were able to finally implement and roll out that noxious weed cost share, that new and improved noxious weed cost share in 2024. So within that grant, we received about $160,000 to distribute over 3 years. We wrote into that grant a match of $40,000 in the form of participant dollars. So that's where our match came from, is through that participant cost share. And that $160,000 provided some capacity funding, cost share funding, that's the bulk of it, some administration funding, and some advertisement funding. Those are the main things we wanted to touch. And we started to roll that out in summer 2024. We had a lot of adjustments to make to our previous noxious weed cost share program. So we did a lot of development of the program, which you'll hear about from Greg in a little bit, and rolled that out in summer 2024. That is going to end for us in winter 2026. So that will be the end of that 3-year time period. Another really important note, in November 2024, we did pass a mill levy. So that was a big step for us. We had spent a lot of time during those years working towards the mill levy, and we passed a mill levy of 0.15% last November, which brings in just over $700,000 for the district annually. So that will play a really big role in how we fund our noxious weed cost share program in the future, in terms of cost shares, and really it will allow us to expand our offerings as well. So that was a really big step for us. So, part of this talk, part of this conversation is talking about how to make a sustainable program, how to create sustainable funding sources. And for us, as you can tell, a lot of our previous sort of funding sources have been grant-based. But what I kind of want to talk about is how we've reframed sort of what a sustainable program looks like for us, taking information that we've gathered from some of our other programs, as well as this one, to really determine what we will consider a sustainable program in the future. So what that means is we've seen this in a lot of our programs. We offer technical assistance, financial assistance, pretty common. The technical assistance we have put a lot of time and effort into. We have really boosted up the just the information that we're giving participants within our programs. We've really leaned heavily on partners such as our local extension office, county partners, other organizations to really increase our depth of knowledge and what we're able to offer participants in all of our programs. So we've really focused in on that technical assistance, and what we've seen from many of our programs is the technical assistance portion tends to be more important than the financial assistance. So if we give you a management plan and a cost share, the management plan tends to be considered more important by the participant. Um, they need knowledge. That's what they're here for. That's what they're come to us for. The finances, again, we live in a very unique county. We are very economically diverse here. So of course, the financial portion is more important to some than others. But we have found overwhelmingly that the technical assistance piece is more valued in our community than the financial assistance portion. So that kind of led us to thinking, how do we want to move forward with this program? How do we want to ensure that this program stays in existence regardless of grant funding? Because as we all know, grant funding can be tenuous, and not guaranteed. So by honing in on that technical assistance piece, we are considering our Noxious Weed program to be sustainable for the future. We consider it to be something that exists permanently in our range of offerings, despite the cost share funding that may or may not exist. And what that requires is that capacity funding. So again, I want to go back to that county partnership. With that county partnership, we were able to fund positions that were able allowed us to get that mill levy. But if we had not received that mill levy, we would still have that county partnership. We would still be funding our positions via that county partnership. And that's really important. We hadn't thought about that before 2021, but once that came onto the table in 2021, that's great. We worked really hard to create those partnerships with our natural resource department at the county, so they see the value in what we do, and they understand that we can fulfill roles that they cannot. So they push for us and advocate for us within those county settings. And that county partnership really can allow your capacity to grow. Additionally, we tap into our district conservation technician program. I don't think that's nationwide, I'm not positive, but in Colorado, that's funded through the state. And that pays for a technician who works with the NRCS 80% of the time, district 20% of the time. And what they're working on are soil health practices, noxious weed mapping. Those are all things we can channel into that noxious weed program. We can have our technician out there doing that noxious weed mapping and promoting soil health practices through that program. So again, increasing that capacity funding. And then I know this isn't an option for everybody, but that mill levy funding, of course, will always be able now to help provide us with capacity. But really, at the end of the day, we decided that if we had the bones of the program set, the process set, and a little bit of capacity to implement, this program could be sustainable for the future, regardless of cost share funding. That being said, cost share funding is important. So the financial assistance portion, that is where we're looking at those grants. Again, that America the Beautiful Challenge, as well as our state noxious weed grants. Those are really important. Our mill levy funding may come into play in the future. We may tap into that for some cost share funding. And then again, looking at those county and municipal partnerships. We look at our county and municipalities as great resources for match dollars. We utilize that in other programs, and that may be something we tap into in the future is, we're able to provide the boots on the ground, but county and municipalities may be able to provide the funding. It may look different everywhere, but that is one of the avenues that we've looked at for some of our programs. So, again, kind of reframing that what's a sustainable in our sort of realm that we work in here in Eagle County, we've determined that that technical assistance is the most important part. And so developing that program, developing that process, and maintaining a little bit of capacity, that is what has allowed us to put that program in as a permanent program within the district and something we can offer year after year after year, regardless of the cost share funding. So that's an overview of how we are where we are today. I think what's really important in this discussion, as well as talking about our program, how we build, or what it looks like. What are we offering our constituents? What are we offering our participants that makes it so valuable? And for that, I'm going to turn it over to Greg to talk about, because he's done a lot of work over the past few years to really build our program, increase the value of the program, and he's identified a lot of really neat things. So I'm going to turn it over to him to talk about what that looks like today.
Yeah, thanks, Allegra. Um, yeah, I guess first off, our noxious weed program is a 75% cost share. Other counties do this a little bit differently. There's a lot of 50-50% cost shares out there in surrounding counties in Colorado here. And it's up to 2250 per landowner each year. So as long as the landowners are reaching $3,000 in control costs throughout the year, that's something that they may be able to hit that maximum depending on after we kind of do an initial review as well as the board does a final review. I guess, for to approve these cost shares. The big thing that I wanted to do, I just got hired last March, but one of the things that I wanted to do was build out a little bit more of a process for the program, just one for education for the landowners, as well as something a little bit easier for the district to continue to follow through as more landowners become engaged in this program. The very first thing that we always recommend folks to do is to submit an intake form. Right now, that it's just a Google form. So if we're out talking at an event or just passing by folks in the grocery store, a lot of us kind of know, or a lot of them kind of know our faces. So the first thing that I'll do is, if you're interested in the Noxious Weed Cost Share program, head to our website. You can fill out an intake form. That just gets some basic information, kind of puts them in the queue for us to reach out to then schedule a site visit. That's something that we try to do with everybody. Sometimes there's exceptions to that rule, but during the site visit, I typically spend about 30 minutes to an hour and a half, depending on the property. If the landowner is with me, I always try to have the landowner with me. That's just another point of education, which is a really big part of kind of my role as well as kind of what I value. I want to make sure that the folks that are in our community are all well educated, especially with noxious weed control. As we know, that is something that can get a little out of hand and maybe some different, we'll talk about this later, but some chemical misuse and different things like that, just some different challenges. So after I do a site visit, I guess while I do the site visit, I'll often map. So we can use a variety of tools. That could be Survey 123 or field maps. If you guys have access to ARC software, it could also be free software like Avenza. That's just a mapping app that I use on a phone. You can, of course, use a handheld GPS too if that is something that is available to your districts. I'll basically go through the whole entire property and map exactly what species I'm seeing, the size of the infestations, just so I can go back and then create a map, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So after I do the site visit with them, I'll take all of that information and kind of formulate a management plan. Within that is kind of a site evaluation, and then a map. And then after that, I will hopefully, if the landowners are willing and able, I will try to come back out to their property after the control is finished throughout the year. That just allows me to go out and maybe there's a little bit more opportunity to educate the landowner on the practices that they've done, maybe some areas that they may have missed, or just some considerations in the future, such as seeding or different soil health practices. After, I guess, my work is done there, I will advise them to go onto our website again, which is another Google form for our actual application. We tried to make this, no one likes paperwork. That is something that I try to streamline. So the Google form is fairly straightforward, pretty easy for folks to fill out. Some of the things that we require within our application are before and after photos of the noxious weeds and different infestations throughout their property, as well as we'll collect invoices, other documentation such as labor hours, any costs for revegetation, or any chemical sales or costs incurred during the process. And then they'll submit their application. Next slide, please. So I talked a little bit about this already, but I'll go into a little bit more depth. Within our plans, this is something I wanted to, again, streamline. It's something that doesn't have to take a whole lot of time. I can typically get a plan out within an hour of getting back to the office. And most of that is just utilizing maps or creation of maps. So during the site evaluation, again, I will identify the different weed species that were on the property. So I'll take that spatial data information that I collected on my phone through an app, again, like Avenza, And then I will put that into ArcGIS or a different mapping software. If you don't have, again, if you don't have access to Arc software as your from your district, this is something that Google Earth or even Google My Maps can help you create. I think the visual aspect is really helpful for landowners as well as the district. And as these folks continue to apply throughout subsequent years, it's something that we can kind of keep an eye on and how these infestation sizes have changed, if there's something else. So just good monitoring to allow for adaptive management in the future. Again, within that evaluation, we'll also do land type and site conditions. So I'll take note if the area is irrigated or on a slope aspect of that field, and just any other kind of environmental conditions or site conditions that could be helpful for these landowners. And then within the plan itself, I will list out all of the species with the biological, chemical, cultural, and mechanical control methods for each species. So as we all know, the different species will require a little bit of a different approach. So that is something that I make sure to specify in our management plans. And then in addition to the control methods, I always advise folks to do some revegetation or other work on the property to just allow for more cultural control. So just to allow more native vegetation to help to compete with some of these noxious weed seeds that are in the seed bank. Within that reseeding and revegetation section of the management plan, I will often either share some mixes that I know that will work well for their area, or just individual species if they're looking for something a little bit different than some of the mixes. And then, of course, the personalized map. Again, this will show specific species, infestation size, and the area on their property, as well as their property boundary, just to get them just a good relative view. And then at the end of each management plan that I give folks, I'll have a list of different resources. So these are often just links to different resources that I found that to be valuable for landowners. One of those is a list of local contractors. This is something that Eagle County government has on their website that I like to share with folks. This is something that they will change throughout the years. I don't like to say who to go to exactly, so I'll just give folks a list if they can't do the work themselves and they need a little bit extra help. This is something that's been really helpful for those folks. Allegra mentioned this earlier. Eagle County also has herbicide sales, so they can I'll typically refer folks to those guys to help with some chemical sales there. Seeding information, again, for the revegetation aspect of the plan, I'll give resources on how to seed properly and effectively and efficiently. Seed is pretty expensive. Going out there and doing the labor is pretty expensive. So I want to make sure that we are considering those costs. And then species lists. So from CSU Extension, NRCS has some resources, and then Eagle County has some resources as well there. So these are all kind of things that I'll share with the landowner, a lot of which I will already talk about during our site visit. So it's just kind of sharing information in different ways just to make sure that the landowners are well educated ultimately. Next slide. Some of the program metrics. We are always hoping for more engagement. I want these numbers to be higher in the future. I'm sure they will be. But in 2024, we had 34 landowners engaged in our program. In 2025, 27 landowners, in addition to HOAs. So different HOAs have reached out for me to talk with them and become engaged in our program, as they have, I guess, on one side of it, HOAs want to make sure that the private land, privately owned land within their communities, is being managed properly. So that's one way to get in contact with the landowners, or for the landowners to get in contact with us. And the other thing is for the HOA kind of open spaces. So that's something that we've been able to help with this year, kind of identify, go out, do some mapping, just to help them kind of offset some costs there. Speaking of which, some of those costs will actually, these folks in the HOAs have thought about kind of adjusting their HOA dues based off of some of the knowledge that they have regarding costs with just vegetation management in general. So this is something that more HOAs are becoming a little bit more on board with, regardless of our program. I think just going out and educating the HOA and the landowners within the community has been really, really helpful. So Allegra mentioned that regardless of funding and the cost share part of our program, the technical assistance is always there with us. And that's something that we really, really value. And that's something that, if capacity allows, is something that I always kind of recommend other folks to do as well with different organizations. Just going out, talking to the folks, and getting them on the right path, just for successful management there. The number of acres evaluated in 2024 was 1,060, and in 2025, 1,334. This is quite a big difference. So you'll notice that in 2024, the engagement is 34 landowners. However, only 9 folks applied to our cost share. We have a little bit of money to share, and we want to make sure that that folks are being incentivized. But to Allegra's point earlier, a lot of folks are really, that's why I'm kind of emphasizing the need for technical assistance. Most folks just want the technical assistance. So this year I met with around 30 folks, went out to most of their properties, and they said, you know what, leave that money for someone else. We can handle it. We just wanted some advice. So that's really great and really, really useful part of our program, just the technical assistance piece. In 2025, we do have applications coming in, but I didn't want to misreport anything since this is a recorded meeting. So that will be determined in the future. But what we do is we set a deadline. So for this year, we're hoping to have all of our applications in by Thanksgiving, just to give a little bit of background there. Next slide. Some of the program issues that we touched on a little bit. During the application process, folks can go in and say, I spent 20 hours doing mechanical, just let's say weed pulling, musk thistle, for example. And then we go through a little bit farther down the application and realize that that was only 1,000 square feet. So sometimes there is a little bit of discrepancy there, and something that has been a little bit challenging and something that the board deliberates on a lot during final review is how much or how much time should be allotted to a certain control method within a certain extent or a certain square footage or acreage. So that is something that we haven't nailed down just yet, because we want to be fair, and every site is different, and everybody's conditions are a little bit different too. Some of them are very steep hillsides that are pretty difficult to get up. A lot of these folks have challenges with that, so sometimes it takes them a little bit longer. So either over-reporting or under-reporting, just trying to get the reporting aspect as far as labor goes. So if folks are doing labor themselves, it's a little harder to track down. If folks are utilizing contractors, it's a little bit easier. They'll send an invoice, say how many hours they worked, all of those specifics. So that is just one challenge that we see and something that we hope to kind of nail down in the future. And then the other thing with that is just management techniques and timing. And this all comes down to education. Again, I will go out and I will help them in person, and then I will send a follow-up management plan. And then I'll usually follow up a couple more times before applications are due, just to make sure that people are doing the right thing. They make sure that they're being assisted how they expect to be. But sometimes there's a loss. Sometimes folks go a little bit away from some of the management plans that we give them or some of the advice that we give them, to the point where the timing of, let's say, chemical application or the rate or even the product used on their property was incorrect. So that's something, again, that's why we emphasize the education piece so much, and that's why it's so important, is just to make sure that we're not, um, I guess, one, wasting any resources, so the landowner's time and money. We want to make sure that they have the proper tools and tool belt. And again, if they're using chemicals, just to make sure there's no excessive chemical use out in our environment. So those are a couple of challenges for us. And then engagement, as we saw in the last slide, we meet with tons of folks and only a few apply. That's something that I hope will change in the future because we do have this funding. A lot of folks or a lot of different organizations don't quite have the funding or the capacity to do so. So I feel obligated to um, I guess, do the best we can with our program because we do have these funds and we do have the capacity. So making sure that it's successful and that everyone's being assisted is really important. Again, hoping that all of these numbers multiply over the years, and I'm sure they will. But um, hopefully the applications we've received this year will outnumber last year. I hope so. I think we've been able to go out and doing this process that I've talked about has been really helpful. Again, no one likes paperwork, so I try to make it super easy for folks. Um, and that is the big thing. As we all know, we work with NRCS a lot, and a lot of folks are may not like some of the reporting or some of the documentation that goes along with that, just because it takes so much time. So the time piece is something that I would take into consideration when building out a noxious weed program. Is just how much you're asking the landowner to do to be incentivized to do the management. So it's about all I have for you folks. If anyone from the panel needs to say anything, I guess we can open up the board to some questions here.
Awesome. That was fantastic, guys. And we do have some questions for you. So, a couple of things. Someone was interested in Alaska. They're looking at treating invasive trees. And so talking through like how to provide chemicals, is it possible for a district to, do you know, or are you better off to recommend, somewhere else? Kind of talk through that as it relates to your program.
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I think as we mentioned, we've sort of left the chemical sales in the county's hands. So we refer folks to them. But I do know there are a few conservation districts within Colorado that do provide chemical sales. I think right off the top of my head, Gunnison Conservation District comes to mind as one who does. So I'll say I don't have the resources for kind of how to go about that, but I know that there are some conservations districts such as the Gunnison Conservation District, and Greg, you might know of some as well.
Yeah, I think there are certainly different organizations, but yeah, we can't speak to too much of that just because we usually just refer folks to Eagle County. And yeah, again, other conservation districts may have that service as well.
Yeah, I feel like it's a good opportunity to visit with like your Department of Agriculture or like your state agency that kind of oversees pesticides and distribution and take backs and things like that is a good starting point if you're looking for some of that information. Because I know, I mean, it varies widely across the country on regulations and policies and all of those things. So. How about talk a little bit more? There's a question about the actual implementation of the program. Can you talk just a little bit more about like your landowner relationships and any district activities and just kind of how that all works together just a little bit more?
Yeah, I'll let Greg take the brunt of this, but I do want to also mention, I think something I hadn't mentioned before is one of the reasons that we were approached for some of these opportunities was because of our existing relationship with the landowners. We've historically worked with the agricultural producers in Eagle County, but through some of our other programs, some of our more residential facing programs, we really expanded sort of that footprint within the district. And now most people within the county do know who we are, know our name, know what we do. So really those relationships and getting our name out there was what brought a lot of these opportunities into our laps. And I will also say too, one of the ways we were able to get this program out there and promote it just beyond just the landowner relationships, which Greg can speak to, we did a lot of advertising. We put the Noxious Weed cost share on the radio. That may not be a thing everywhere, but people listen to the radio in our county. We put it in the paper, in our newsletters, and then really honed in particularly sort of on that larger acreage landowner community. um, we also we went to board meetings. We've been to board meetings for municipalities. We've been to town meetings. We go to a lot of, town meetings and county meetings and give a lot of presentations. We say, hey, can we give you an update on what we're doing this year? And get up there and give a 5-minute update. And we always promote our Noxious Weed Cost Share program in that. So with that, we've also received some municipality engagement as well, which has been really exciting. So, really getting out there, getting the word out there in other ways beyond just those interpersonal relationships has also helped increase our engagement. And then, yeah, I can let Greg speak to the rest of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Allegra hit on just about everything. One thing that has been really cool to see with our program specifically, um, sometimes we are I mean, we kind of go all over. So sometimes I'm in the backyard, in a house, in a community, and other times I'm on a huge hayfield. So the folks that we are servicing is we service everybody, and that's been really great. And a lot of that, um, I guess, continued support for the program has come from folks just talking to one another. There's often times where I'm on a site visit, and neighbors will kind of be seeing what I'm doing since I'm on their property line, but like right next to their property line, they're snooping around, asking what I'm doing there, and then I end up spending another hour with them walking through their property. So that's happened quite a few times, and that's always really great. I love that aspect of field visits. Going out and creating those connections, making sure that the folks are educated, and then allowing them to kind of help. I mean, they kind of promote to their neighbors as well. So I guess that's another kind of a cool aspect, at least where we are, where most folks I would say are interested. They just don't know what resources are available to them. So that's really great. Just going out and doing the work, kind of people are curious, asking what we're doing, looking at the ground.
And
Right? I love
I'll
that.
actually mention one other just quick thing. We also, in our first year of the grant, we have a partner organization here, the Eagle River Coalition. So they deal with the riparian systems here and they do a lot of restoration work. And they had received a small amount of money to do Russian olive and tamarisk removal. So what we did is we integrated their program into our Noxious Weed Cost Share program. So if somebody had to replace a Russian olive or tamarisk, they were able to do so through our program. So that we partnered with them to, two birds, one stone, rather than directing people to multiple sources. We said, hey, let's just integrate that into what we do, create an MOU, a partnership with them. And I think that also helped really increase engagement both with our program and with their program.
That's awesome. I love the idea of leveraging multiple programs to try and get the biggest bang for your buck and have like that one stop, we can do it all right here.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
can you talk just a little bit, and this is probably a Greg question, can you talk a little bit about the actual like on the ground implementation as far as there was a couple questions about in your management recommendations, how do you deal with like specific chemical regulations and application guidelines and things like that? And then also if you're doing any kind of, if the landowner is doing all of the work, do you get involved with any kind of project management, if you will, like helping them, keep track of hiring, managing, etc., contractors in any way, shape, or form outside of just here's our recommended list?
Yeah, great questions, and hopefully I'll hit them all. As far as chemical recommendations go, I know that can put us in a vulnerable spot. So that's something that I ensure does not happen. So I always refer to Colorado Department of Agriculture to get those recommendations. And then I will also cross-reference that or add anything to those chemical recommendations specifically from Eagle County. So that way it kind of safeguards us from any liability there regarding pest or chemical use. Um, the as far as going out and doing any physical work, that is something that we do not do. I have always thought about doing some sort of volunteer program to help do some mechanical control, but that's something that hasn't we haven't really looked into that too deeply. And I don't really know how that would work on private land. But it's something that we can look into in the future and something that could be pretty cool. I think leveraging just volunteer stewardship is really a really cool idea. Um, and but I will I will go out with them and kind of walk through the property with them. Let them know this is this species. Take a picture on your phone, put a little note. A lot of these folks are pretty interested. So if they're around, they'll follow me around for an hour or so as I'm mapping, and I'll just talk through them the whole, or talk with them through the whole process. After that, again, I'll give them the management plan, and then I just kind of have an open door for them throughout the season to answer any questions, to talk to any contractors. I have gone out and met with some contractors on the properties. Um, just to let them know that of our expectations that we're following these certain guidelines, especially with chemicals. Um, again, that just kind of helps with the education piece, make sure that we're kind of on the same page, and then educating even the contractors so they have a good place to go to whenever they, I guess, have herbicide questions, rates, timing, product, species, all of those things. We just refer them to the county or to Colorado Department of Agriculture if they need super specifics there. But I don't have any hands-on work with these folks. It's all just technical assistance. Um, yeah, just educating, sending things out, and kind of doing my best there to make sure that things kind of go according to plan. If landowners suspect that there is something that is maybe challenging with their contractor, again, I'll step in and talk with them regarding that. But there's really no project management on that side. It's more just if the landowner has any questions or concerns, they'll pull me in and we'll have just like a conversation about it.
Sure.
Hopefully that answers some of the questions.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was one of those like it really is just a technical assistance and being that point of contact to help facilitate those conversations, which I think is awesome. And what a great
Absolutely.
group of folks to have too, as far as building those relationships with local contractors that are doing that work too. Now you are a trusted resource and they can point people your direction as well, which is fantastic.
Absolutely.
Let's see, what is the average acreage do you think that you work on? Like if you had to guess.
Crazy. That is a that's a great question. I will I guess let's look at the range. I have met with someone this year that had a 400 square foot infestation on a quarter acre property. And then I've also been out on several hundred acre ranch and drove around in a UTV and went to all the different infestations to help map. Um, and so it really depends. I can't really give a specific average because it's so variable.
Yeah,
Um, but I would say, I don't know, if I were to try to throw a number out, I may be in the average of, I guess most folks are maybe 5-ish acres,
sure,
5 or 10 acres, I would say.
sure. But open to
Yeah,
anything, no discrimination. Smallest to the
exactly.
largest, right?
Exactly. Yep.
I love it. Let's see, there's a couple others here on just kind of so this was an interesting one, and I think something that a lot of people have been exposed to in a big conversation on using artificial intelligence to create any plans or to help you do anything with that, or are you old school? I'm gonna put all the brain power into it.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I'm pretty old school when it comes to it. I think, yeah, this is tricky. Yeah. I think if we were to utilize AI, there would be a large need to ensure that all of the information is absolutely correct. Um, I would I would be nervous to utilize AI because of that. Um, but I'm sure it could be something that is helpful in certain capacity, in certain regard. But for me specifically, I'm kind of just the old-fashioned way. I'll dig out a book or call up a friend if I need some help to make sure that we put the right information on the management plan.
Yes, absolutely. I think that is one very important thing for anyone using AI for anything. It pulls from everywhere in the entire internet. So you really have to do a good job of fact checking and making sure that the resources that you're pulling from are science-based, if that's what you're pulling from, things like that. So that's a very good point, if folks are using it to help them out. Um, let's see, there's a couple of things. There's a question, Greg, for you about it. Do you spend all of your time doing this program or do you have other responsibilities?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, as a DCT, a lot of my time is actually working on kind of Inflation Reduction Act activities. So a lot of that is soil or involves soil health. And again, a lot of that involves working with the NRC, our local NRCS office here in Glenwood Springs, to make sure that contracts and different conservation planning processes are being completed for different landowners for different projects through EQIP or CSP and things like that. So I would say that I split my time between doing assisting the NRCS office with EQIP and CSP. Some of that is noxious weeds, certainly, especially through different CSP programs. Um, I just a few weeks ago went out with a landowner with a CSP contract through NRCS to do some certifications on their fields to make sure that they're kind of upholding their agreement for noxious weed management, or as NRCS calls it, herbaceous weed management. So
Yep.
herbaceous weed treatment. Sorry. Um, so yeah, a lot of my time is doing things like that with NRCS. But as far as the district goes, I work on a few different things. I work on the Noxious Weed program because wolves have been reintroduced. We also have a small wolf grant that we got from Colorado Department of Agriculture to help landowners um, just implement different livestock conflict mitigation tools. Again, that's something that works pretty hand in hand with NRCS as well, because NRCS can fund certain projects, and then we can fund certain activities too. It's a small amount of money. It's not quite like Equip, but or through the RCPP program. There's a little bit of overlap there, but that's something that I do for the district as well. And then before the Colorado Soil Health program was terminated, I worked on the Colorado Soil Health program for the district. That was terminated at the beginning or earlier this year, but that's something that we still have some funding and a little bit of capacity to help landowners at least do soil samples and analyze soil testing and just kind of help enhance soil. So we kind of have, even though it's not, um, yeah, even though it's not a solid program at the moment, because of the termination of the program, we still go out and do technical assistance and still kind of act like an ear and a little bit of an advice giver for soil health stuff. So, and then a very small part of my time, which doesn't really take up much time at all, is seed sales. So that's something as a DCT, that's something that isn't we're not allowed to. I guess 80% of our time, it can't be doing sales for the district. So 20% of my time is something that I allow to do other things, administrative things for the district, seed sales, things that just don't really fall under the DCT category. So hopefully that helps answer your
Yeah,
question.
And I'll just make
absolutely.
a note too, just because I know this is always of importance, is the funding also for Greg's position is, again, 80% of that is coming from that DCT grant through the state. So it's a state-run grant. And then the other 20% is cobbled together through a little bit of district funding, and then additionally the capacity from this America the Beautiful grant It's not, it doesn't pay for, of course, the whole salary, but it helps pay for some of that capacity. So, the funding sources for Greg's position do come from three different locations, three or four different locations, which, helps us maintain that position and also help offset the 20% that we're covering outside of the 80% and also be able to provide a little bit of that match for the grant.
Sure. Sure. I think that's a lot of us, right? Where we put together funding from multiple sources to keep
Yeah.
going.
You're
And
10%
that's,
here and 10% there.
yes. Some of this and some of that. That's some of the remaining questions, Allegra, were based on some of the funding things that you talked about, and one of them specifically on kind of someone starting a grant similar to this. And I think I would say if anyone has questions, I'm going to just put it out there. We'll put Allegra and Greg's contact info with this presentation on the website. So if there are specific things that you're trying to get something started like this, and you're like, hey, I want to pick your brain on, how you wrote it, how you kind of got started in it all. Um, you know, it's great to just like talk through those things sometimes, probably way more than we could ever cover in the next couple of minutes here. So, but one specific, so as you were talking, you talked a little bit, Allegra, about recently getting a mill levy. So can you just touch really briefly on some of that process? Because I know there are a lot of districts out there that are kind of in that boat of we don't have one, but we may want to try and get one. And that's a big hurdle to start to move through.
Absolutely. I mean, I guess I'll start off by saying it was a 2 to 3 year long process. So it was long. It was a really long process for us to really focus in on getting our name out there, making sure people knew who we were. We did have to conduct our own election. Our county was not able to conduct our election, so that also created a pretty big price tag on it. So we had to do a lot of fundraising over the a few years. We also made a lot of decisions about, we went for a very small mill levy. It was 0.15, which amounts to, again, we live in a very wealthy county, so I'll say $10 per $1 million home. That's kind of how we promoted it to people, is it's a cup of coffee. Expensive cup of coffee, but it's a cup of coffee. And so a lot of work over the 2 to 3 years went into fundraising, promotion, and just information, getting information out there about who we were, what we did, building programs that serviced every single person within the county. That was really important to us. So it was, and I will say another really important thing is everybody told us it was not the right year, it was not the right time. Wait, wait, wait. There's never a right year, there's never a right time. We were on the 2024 November ballot alongside a presidential election, two other tax initiatives, and I think our ballot was 4 or 5 pages long. It was huge. So there was never a right time for us. But I think we did a survey, we did two surveys ahead of time to really ensure that we did feel we had the support of the voters. And both of those came back pretty positive. And at the end of it, we ended up with, I think it was between 60 and 70% approval or yes votes. So that was really big confidence boost for us. But I will say, long process, had to do a lot of fundraising, and the biggest thing, telling people who we are, what we did, and that we're only asking you for a cup of coffee. And our mill levy in particular, and I know we're going a little bit over, we we don't have a sunset clause, so it is in perpetuity. We are able to increase it in the future. So that's why we also went for a really low amount, is with that knowledge that start small, and if in the future we grow and grow and grow and think there's capacity to increase this tax, we can address that down the road. But for now, start with the smallest amount possible to do what we're trying to do, which more or less that money allowed us to grow capacity, and is allowing us to build new programs. So yeah, that's kind of the quick and nitty gritty of it.
Great. And I think that's probably the biggest take home for everyone because the process probably slightly different across the country and, from county to county even sometimes. But the great take home is start small and start talking to people about all the good things you're doing and all of the great things you could do if you had a small amount of money more than what you do.
And
Um,
I will always say this, we wrote a small grant to build a small program, but that program was for residential backyards. So it touched every single person in the county versus just the large acreage landowners that we've historically worked with. So through that small grant that did backyard conservation, everyone had a chance to participate with us and know who we were. So I think that was also a really big step for us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You don't have to start off with the multi-million-dollar thing, right? You can start off with $1,000 that helps you do some outreach or host a meeting or just get
Yeah.
out there and you can
Go
build
to
up that
town council
support.
meetings, every single one
Yes.
you can.
Yes, absolutely. And just build
Yeah.
support that way so
Mhm.
people see you, they know you, then that kind of things start to build on each other as you start to do that. So that's great advice. I love that. Let's see. One late question came in here about prioritizing applications. So we'll finish up with this one, Greg. If you like, do you prioritize different types of weeds? Are they all treated the same? Are applications somehow ranked, or is it just first come, first serve?
Yeah, that's a good question. We do not do ranking. We will collect every application, and we will review every application as staff, and then we will, after we kind of do that review, if there's any tweaks that need to be changed, we work with landowners pretty tightly. So if there's anything that was incorrect on an application, I'll reach out and say, hey, this is incorrect. Let's change that just to give them more of a chance so we don't just throw their application away. We do everything we can to make sure that everyone that applies receives the same exact, uh, I guess, level of care, I guess we
Mhm.
can say. So after we do the review, then give it to our board. I think because of our history, they really they really value being a part of the reimbursement process and improving these different applications. So as long as they have all of the correct documentation, I will send that to the board. After sending it to Allegra, we'll send it to the board, and then they will do the final review. At that point, there is no real strict ranking process when it comes or when it goes to the board. They will just review it and make some slight changes. Sometimes they will notice maybe an over-reporting detail, or they think maybe is maybe some incorrect information, and then they will just they'll kind of massage that reimbursement request to make it kind of fit their views. So I think because of that, there's a lot of deliberation during board meetings coming down to the approvals of these applications. But it's a part of the process that we don't really want to limit to a ranking system. We want to give everyone a fair shot.
And I will say too, with the funding, it is first come, first serve in that regards. And then in terms of the noxious weeds, we particularly hone in on list A, list B, list C species as listed through the Colorado Department of Agriculture. So we refer to the state on sort of
Sure.
those priority species.
Yeah,
Great.
thanks, Allegra.
Mhm.
I love that. Well, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you both taking the time. This has been fantastic. A lot of really great information. And we will put the recording up. It might take me a day or two to get it up, but it will go up on our ncdea.us website. There's a training page that we have all of our recordings from previous webinars as well. So you can go back and watch a lot of really great information. There's some on there about finding different grants. I know some funding questions came forward today. There's some really good ones on even some of the mill levy questions that have been in the past. We've had some other unique kind of programming opportunities like these as well, where there's some different relationships that have been built through conversations, which I think is the best way to build up your programs and services and to really support your districts the best that you can. So, Allegra, Greg, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. You guys were fantastic. And we will see everyone next month. So, thank you.